Hey, this is former superstar David Young from TNA. You're listening to the Stu's podcast, and I'm so happy to be here, and thank you, UK, for having us there.
You're listening to Stu's Wrestling Podcast. It's time for British Wrestling's sharpshooter, your host, Stu Palmer.
A warm welcome to episode 92 of Stu's Wrestling Podcast, and my guest this week is former WWF talent Jameson, John DiGiacomo, who is also an actor and a comedian. John was around the WWF from 1989 to 1993. We get to talk about his great friendship with Sensational Sherri. He's also got some great stories about the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase. He also talks about how Vince discovered him. There's a great story behind that, and how much he liked the character of Jameson that John played. Outside of wrestling, John was an exec on Wall Street many years ago in the 80s. He talks about that in quite a bit of detail, and he also says about the Hollywood films that were based on Wall Street and how close they were to what actually happened there. John also talks about his son James, a child actor, and he's also been a part of WWE. He was on Extreme Rules 2014 when the Wyatt Family, most notably Bray, took on John Cena at the event. He was cast as Little Johnny, and there's a story behind it as well. When they were backstage, Vince didn't realise it was John's son, and it was John, the guy that he had in the WWF in 1989 to 1993. Madness, absolute madness. But yes, some great stories. I really enjoyed doing this one, and I can't wait for you to hear it. So, without further ado, my guest for episode 92 of Stu's Wrestling Podcast is former WWF star Jameson, actor, comedian John DiGiacomo. Enjoy. My guest all the way from New York in the good old US of A, it is John DiGiacomo, but you will remember him most notably as the character Jameson in WWF. And John, that was one of my most favourite eras in wrestling. I started watching in 1990. You were obviously prevalent on television. How are you today, sir? Absolute honour to have you on, because I remember you very well growing up.
Well, thank you. And it's great to be with you. Excited. It's only 9 o'clock in the morning here, but I'm an early riser. So I'm already 3 cups of coffee in.
Perfect. Morning's my favourite time. So yeah, this should go very well. Right, I'm going to go back to the late 80s when you came into WWF, and Vince McMahon saw you at a private comedy show. I am right in saying that, aren't I?
Yes.
Is that how the wheels got started? Is that how the wheels got set in motion? Yes.
It was like an audience participation show, murder mystery. And a lot of it was improv, and there were some scripted scenes, but the bulk of the show was improvisation. You had to react to the guests, and I think Vince, I know that he enjoyed me. I had him laughing a lot, and that's what attracted him to me, was my improvisation skills. They were at that time looking for a co-host to work with Bobby Heenan on the Bobby Heenan show, like the Ed McMahon to his Johnny Carson. Well, now I'm going way back, but his co-host, and it worked great. I mean, from the minute we were in the same room together, we just started feeding off of each other. It went really well, and they offered me a contract that day.
Just what a shame the Bobby Heenan show only ran for 4 episodes. That's crazy to me, because obviously I watched it later. I was a bit young when you were doing that.
Right.
I would have only been 3 years old, but obviously over the years I've seen clips and when they've shown stuff on the network and things like that. Why did it not run longer, John? Because you and Bobby, what a dynamic. What a dynamic. Perfect.
Yeah, the network, USA was the network, weren't happy with it. I mean, it kind of came as a shock to everybody, because I think the wrestling community, including, the executives, the talent, the fans, most of all, were loving it. And it was getting Good ratings, good. Everything was good about it, but I just don't think that USA was comfortable with the format and the humor of it. I think it would fly better now, just because of how many media outlets there are that would run something like that. But at the time, cable TV was in its infancy. Networks wouldn't touch it. The major networks. And it wasn't really sports, so you couldn't go to one of the sports cable. And USA, Vince had a great run with that network, doing all the Monday night show right into Raw. So it was just a decision that was made and really shocking to most of us. And Vince had to find something else for me to do.
Give me some stories like off the top of your head about Bobby Heenan. Still the greatest color commentator and performer in the history of pro wrestling. I know that's universal with a lot of people, but him and Gorilla Monsoon, for me, the best commentary tandem in the history of the game.
Even Bobby and Mean Gene worked well together.
Yeah.
Mean Gene was just a master at setting Bobby up. What my fondest memories of working with Bobby was that I was able to crack him up at times where we had to reshoot, retake, because he had to play this hard ass guy who had absolutely no use for Jameson. So if I did something that made him laugh, I got a kick out of that. I was pretty good, as funny as he was, I was pretty good at staying in character. I had no training, but just good instinct to just stay in character. And, my reaction to him really set him up for his next delivery. So if I didn't stay exactly in character, we would have been all over the place, but it was a really good mix. So yeah, my fondest memories with Bobby was that he really, really thought I was a terrific actor and very funny and all that, and told people that, I had literally been acting less than a year when Vince found me. But somehow, I think the perception was I'd been doing this since I was a kid, and I hadn't been. I was 30 already. I guess I was 30. Yeah. When the Bobby Heenan show went on the air. So Bobby was always so generous with praise and a lot of the guys, saw how popular the character was getting. And, I'm talking about the wrestlers now. And when they meet me off camera in the dressing room or backstage, in the green room or catering or whatever, nobody knew it was me. It was Jameson. And all I did was grease my hair and put on glasses, but I changed my posture. I was in really good shape in those days. I was, not a gym rat, but I took care of myself. I was in really good shape, and I had some fighting skills from wrestling and boxing, that whenever I was involved in a bit, I would want them to really hit me, throw me, whatever they, I could take it. I know how to fall, and I had to, and I think that they gained a lot of respect from me, because I was not a wrestler. I was, one of the personalities, and a lot of the guys that were personalities didn't really want to get roughed up. So they didn't, there were a couple that did, but I was never careful about that. For me, as a budding actor, I wanted it to just be real. And I can remember prime time one episode where Sensational Sherri literally beat the shit out of me. And it was great because it looked like I was in distress. And she loved me, and I loved her. She was probably my closest friend when ultimately I had to go on the road. She was a pal. Christmas cards every year, you know. She was a doll.
She was as tough as the men, that lady, as well. We've heard it. We've heard it from the wrestlers, the male wrestlers. You didn't mess with Sherri.
Yeah. A heart of gold. Really, totally opposite of her character.
Yeah.
And Ted was great working with too. Still have a lot of, they actually paired me up twice with them in episodes where they one episode, the premise was that I snuck into his dressing room and tried on the $1 million belt. And right before we went on the air, it got stuck. I couldn't get it off. So I had to cover it with a bathrobe, and I sat in the audience with a bathrobe, and they started up the show, and Ted and Sherri came running onto the stage. Somebody stole the belt. Wait till we get our hands on. And by the end of the episode, they go through the audience with a metal detector, and they find it on me. and she beat the crap out of it. It was great. It was fun.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Now, any other experiences on prime time that stick out for you?
Yeah. One of the greatest well, what everybody talks about, I guess, the most is the episode where the Berserker throws me off the roof. He tries to light me on fire, a Viking ritual. Bobby's handing him a lighter to light me up, and he can't get the fire started, so he brings me up onto the roof of the studio and throws me off the roof. That's what everybody goes, that probably was. They actually kept that storyline going for a couple of weeks. That I had to, I was in the hospital and all that. But like for me, the fondest moment I had was when they shot one night of primetime was devoted totally to Macho Man's bachelor party. And it was just a really great show. I had some really, really good moments. There was at one point where I can remember really cracking up Bobby, like to where they had to kind of edit out the ending of that particular bit. There was this absolutely one of the hottest women I've ever met in person. They had this stripper to come out of Macho Man's cake. She was a knockout. And while this is all going on, the Bushwhackers come on with this 6-foot hero. It's all raw fish. It's all these, real raw fish. And one of them fell out of the sandwich, fell on the floor. So when the stripper was finished and she was leaving and everybody was like freaking out how gorgeous and waving to her and everything, I picked up the fish. I said, "Lady, you forgot your fish." And everybody just broke up. I mean, it was really good. It was such a good feeling that everybody was laughing and calm. And I was interested to see how that was going to play when it aired, but they cut that out because Bobby he just lost it. It was pretty good. There were some good memories. I mean, a lot of the episodes I've forgotten. Actually had the Warlord come up to me at a signing once and ask if I had video of the bit we did together. And I could not remember for the life of me. And then I went back and saw he used me as like a human dumbbell, barbell.
I've seen,
saying,
yeah.
That's not a barbell, that's a dumbbell, because it's Jameson, But yeah, they're just great times. Did a really great opening with Bret Hart, one episode. Worked with a lot of guys. Andre, Hacksaw, Hillbilly Jim, and all the announcers, Sean Mooney, and of course Bobby and Vince, who was some weeks the co-host with Bobby. Mm-hmm. Gorilla didn't really work with him too much, but I know that when I was involved in Raw and going on the road with the Bushwhackers, he called most of the matches. And great guy, real great guy. A lot of them were great guys. Some of them weren't, but most of them were, and most of them made a point of telling me how much they liked what I was doing, but there were guys, especially the old school guys, the guys that were done wrestling, that were Vince's, advisors, and just didn't think Jameson was good for wrestling. That he was just too unbelievable, whacked out, which to me is kind of crazy, because a lot of guys were almost unbelievable. But thankfully Vince was a huge fan. And I know that Hulk Hogan was a huge fan. And, I think that kind of helps when, some of the big names would support you. I know that when Primetime ended, and the only way for me to stay involved would be to go out on the road, that I'd have to be a manager or something. Otherwise, there's not a storyline that would fit Jameson traveling around the country just as a fan. So I was relieved when they put me with the Bushwhackers, because they were really funny and I thought it might work, but I really, I felt bad for them, because I could just imagine what was going through their minds when Vince said to them, we're gonna have Jameson. Jameson's gonna be in your corner. But they were such great guys. They never made me feel uncomfortable or like they weren't happy with it. And some of the guys said to me, when I would express, I hope these guys are going to be okay with working with such a schlump. But they say, these guys could use a boost. You'll get them over more. Now they'll become more popular because you're. So I kind of took that and said, all right, I'm going to make this work. And I hope these guys, and I've seen Luke, a couple times. I think Butch is still in New Zealand. Can't get, he can get here, but he's not going to be able to get back to New Zealand. So that's why they had a whole tour planned this year that I was going to be part of, through promoters, nothing to do with WWE.
No. Independent.
But it never came off because they couldn't get him here. But always felt supported by them. And one of the things that's just beyond my comprehension is I didn't, at the time I was there, from 89 to 92, I think into a little bit of 93. I still did some stuff for them right up till 95. I did the magazine cover story. Great time with King Kong Bundy and Ted. It was the Christmas issue. But I didn't have a real understanding of Jameson's popularity. And I was not good with traveling around the country because my wrestling, my acting career was starting to take off. I was booking some TV and commercials, and I wasn't able to really audition because I'd be going out on the road. So even if I booked an audition, I probably wasn't going to be around to shoot the job. So it was kind of a relief to me that I was able to get out of my contract. Vince was so great about it. And had I known then what I know now about Jameson's popularity, maybe I would have made a different decision. But the decision was made, and I went on to have a really good theater career, doing a lot of stage work in New York City. I started writing. I wrote a play that went off Broadway in 97, and won some playwriting awards for short. I won a couple of one-act festivals, and it wasn't until literally 20 years later, like I think it was 2011, people starting friends saying, hey, everybody, all these wrestling sites are looking for the actor that played Jameson. And I was like, yeah, not really recognizing how important it was to some people to find this guy. And I was at the time running a nightclub in the city, booking all the comics and bands. And this comedy group that came in found out I was Jameson, and they said, could we put your picture on our poster and maybe you make an appearance? And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. So somehow Joe Bruin saw the poster, or I'm sure on the internet, and called the bar and said, is he really Jameson? And inducted me into his Hall of Fame. And this sports writer in Poughkeepsie, New York, which is about 100 miles outside the city, big newspaper though, this guy did like a 4-part series on Jameson. That they finally, after 20 years, they found him. And I get a lot of calls to do podcasts and make appearances and all that. And it's just amazing to me that there's still that much buzz about Jameson. Feeling like I gotta, I'm an old man now, but I still got the character in me, and I still got ideas that I could start shooting new video with YouTube and Facebook and all these different outlets. I found this tape. It's hilarious. I found this tape that I shot on a home movie camera in 1993 after I left, in 92, after I left the Royal WWF. I wanted to shoot a demonstration of a storyline that might interest Vince, where I didn't have to travel, where it could be shot here. So I could still do my other acting jobs. And it was just a demonstration video. It's the funniest thing I ever did. It's funnier than anything I ever did on WWF. I recently had it converted from a VHS tape to digital, and starting to release that tape. It's like a Three Stooges short. It's like 13 minutes long. And I just released the first two, like 4-minute, 3 or 4 minute segments of it, and thinking I got to do more of this because I got a great reaction to it. It's really, really funny. Thinking about having DVDs made of it and signing them and selling them. Would love to do a lot more from home than I'm doing now, and that's the kind of thing that I could do. The concepts are hilarious. The film is basically, after I got roughed up by the Genius at the Royal Rumble, my idea was that Jameson joins a gym to get in shape, to get revenge on the Genius. And it's just Jameson just being overwhelmed by, being such a knucklehead, not knowing how any of the machines work, but not wanting help because it was too much money to have a trainer, and trying to convince everybody that I knew what I was doing when I obviously didn't. It's very funny. Really proud of it. And again, that was 30 years ago, 29 years ago. And now comedy still holds up. It's fun. If you like that kind of humor, like Three Stooges, slapstick kind of stuff, it's pretty good.
How was it working with Lanny Poffo, the Genius? Maybe extending off the time you spent with him, because he comes from one of the most famous families in wrestling. And
right.
How was it? How was it working with him? And obviously he was managing the Beverly Brothers at the time.
Right.
Your experiences with Lanny with the Genius.
Yeah, a good guy, and very I think we shared a lot of the same desires to whatever we did, we wanted it to look real. Didn't want to have and he was another one of those guys that said, "Can I really hit you?" Because he smacks me. He actually cut the side of my mouth. But you got 20,000 people in the audience screaming your name, and you could have knocked one of my eyes out. I would have just kept going. It wasn't. And he was a good guy, very, very good guy.
Absolutely. In terms of arenas that you went to, which were some of your favorite crowds?
Well, I would have to say that the 92 Royal Rumble was Knickerbocker Arena. It was a beautiful venue. It was fairly new at the time, I think. And it was packed. I did a New England run, like I think Springfield, Massachusetts. Each trip was like 3 days, 3 shows. Usually took 4 days or 5 days to do it. I did a Florida tour, I did a Texas tour, and I did a New England tour. I don't, none of the, I know we were in San Antonio. None of the arenas really stand out to me. I mean, I was always, whenever the show would end, or my bit would end, I would always try to sneak back to the hotel because all the talent, it was a big time. Everybody did their thing. They hung out, waited until everybody was done, and they'd all, go to strip bars or, get whacked out, and I was not that way. I was like the pothead on tour. I would get stoned and I would go back to the hotel, smoke a joint and watch TV was basically how I wanted to spend my time. But there were nights that somebody would come up to me. We were in Texas one night and Vince and Hook actually got into an argument over whose van I was riding in, going to the strip club. And which always, meant a lot to me that, but again, I was not that. I know if I drank, I'd be shit the next day. Didn't want to do it. So I'd be like the guy, I'd be sticking out like a sore thumb, like Jameson, almost going to these strip clubs. Because these guys would move tables and start wrestling. They took over places. It was pretty wild.
That's crazy. Do you know what? For you to have the strength to do that and come away from that, though, because we hear in interviews with the guys, the excess on the road and stuff like that shows how strong you were as a person, to come away from that.
Yeah,
that's temptation. Temptation,
right?
Isn't it, at the end of the day?
And I already fought through the cocaine wars. I was when I got out of school, I was a pension analyst. I was a financial guy, and wound up working. Most of my clientele was in the Wall Street area, was all high finance, and those movies of that are about that era on Wall Street and all that are all true. I mean, there was, and I was a kid. I mean, I was literally in my early, mid, and then late 20s during that time, and the cocaine was out on every meeting in boardrooms with these guys that were 20, 30 years older than me. It was a problem. And, I got hooked myself and really had to get clean and knew the only way I was going to get clean was to get out of that world. And that's what led me into stand-up comedy, which very quickly on, Vince discovered me. Which was kind of cool because it was good that it was. I didn't go back to it, which I could have very easily. I was not clean that long, and it was around.
Did you make a lot of money on Wall Street at the time? Were you making good money?
I did. Probably too much, and didn't save enough because I was just wild. But enough to like start over. Keep me going for a few weeks. I quickly got involved in, I started designing landscapes. I went to work for a friend, an acting friend, had a landscape business. I started off just doing his books, getting him, incorporated all the legal paperwork and stuff like that. And, doing his payroll, tax stuff. But I needed more hours. So I eventually became a laborer on one of his crews, and that led me into designing the jobs, and that was like, it made up for how unpredictable the acting business is, the income stream from acting. So that's what I did, and then I figured at one point I got married. My wife, very strong-minded woman, wanted to start a family, and I couldn't get a mortgage because, your acting income is so up and down. And she was insistent on, we're not raising our kids in a rental. We're buying a house. We got to buy a house. So I feel I left the acting business for a while and really concentrated on design work and working not only for my buddy, but for a couple of other companies doing their design work, and made good enough income where we could buy a house, figuring I could always get back to acting once we get in the house. And then the kids started coming, and my son, who's, not from this earth, he's unbelievably talented. And I saw it when he was 3. Mm-hmm. And instead of me going back to acting, I just managed his career, and he's booming. He's still booming, which is great.
I can only imagine that's the ultimate for you as a father, getting to live that through your son, what he's doing. And, he's been involved in WWE. And I've also, obviously, speaking to Joe, he said he's been involved with stuff with Disney as well. So, yeah. You could speak a bit about what he's been doing and what his career is like.
His first TV job was, he wasn't even 5 yet. He did an episode of an American show called White Collar, also on the USA Network. And he had a big role in one episode, and that led him to get some really good auditions. His biggest breakout thing, he was 7, and he did a commercial for the National Football League with Cam Newton, who's a popular player of the time, and it's hilarious. You could Google Cam Newton play 60 and watch the commercial and see this little 7-year-old boy kind of passive aggressively taking Cam down. And he got so much attention from it. He got interviewed on NBC and ESPN. It was just a huge commercial. Ran for every football game it ran. Every football fan in America remembers that commercial, remembers him in that. And that just led him to bigger things. Like he did this movie Brooklyn, which I know is big in the UK. It was with Saoirse Ronan. It was about this Irish girl who leaves Ireland in 1952, moves to Brooklyn, and it was up for an Academy Award for Best Picture. Wow. And she was up for Best Actress for that film. Beautiful film. And he had such a standout role as an 8, maybe he was 9 by that time. But he killed it. He crushed it. The reviews were great. And that led him to Disney. He was on the #1 show at Disney for 3 years. He played Zendaya, who's now gone on to much bigger things. Played her next door neighbor. She was the star of the show. It was called Casey Undercover. Zendaya played a high school kid who was actually a spy. And James was like that nosy neighbor, witnessing things that shouldn't be happening. And he was great. And then he became Kevin James' son. Kevin James from King of Queens and Kevin Can Wait was his last show. On Kevin Can Wait, he played Kevin's son. So he was a regular. He was in every episode. Just about every episode. And he's since done movies. Great story. I had not acted for 20 years. And James did this episode, another great show that every person alive should watch. It's a comedy. It's called Rami. It's on, I think, Hulu in this country. I'm sure you could see it there. But it's a show about an Arab American who grew up with so much hatred toward him and his family. The obvious, typical hatred that Americans show Arabs. But it's done with humor, and it's done in such good taste. Well, James played an episode, actually the 9/11 episode, where James is this kid's friend, and it's like a throwback. It's a flashback. And James, he crushed it. And this little film company out in LA saw him on this episode, and they were putting together this film, a short film by an award-winning director, writer. And on a short film, if you're shooting in LA, you're going to hire a local actor. So you don't have to pay for hotels, airfare. You're not going to bring a kid in from New York. But he impressed them so much, they decided we're going to spend the money, because not only do they have to pay for him, but they got to pay for his guardian. So they're Skyping with him, the auditions, and they hire him. And I gave him, he was only, I think, 13 at the time. Total freedom. I didn't sit there and watch him talk to these guys. I gave him full privacy. He comes out of his room. He says, Dad, they offered me the role. And listen, they said to me, James, your resume is so big. Who do you study with in New York? And I told them, well, my dad is an actor. He's the only coach I ever had. And they said, well, why don't you send us his picture? Because we haven't hired the actors yet to play your father or your grandfather. I mean, your father or your uncle. Send us his picture. We'll tell him which role we want him to read. So he sends my picture. They say, tell him to read for the grandfather, which is kind of funny. But, as an actor, I would have, if they told me to read the grandmother, I would have read for the grandmother. An actor will do just about anything. So I read for it. They hired me. We have this film coming out where he's brilliant in it. He'll make you cry. I swear to God. It's such a sad, dramatic movie. It's basically about how abuse is passed down from generation to generation. In this case, in an Italian family, where it starts with the grandpa who abused the father growing up and who's now abusing the son, and how James' character, takes a stand against it. And very emotional. He's in every scene, and he's got to cry on cue. I mean, he's got real tears, and he was able to do it take after take after take. Very moving film. I'm excited for it to come out. But for me, that was a great moment that we got to share the screen. Where we got to share the screen, and it's a very talented cast. Two of the actors from The Sopranos play his parents.
Wow.
Tony Soprano's daughter, Meadow. I don't know how familiar. She plays his mother, and this guy, Lilo Brancato, who was the little boy in A Bronx Tale, played Robert De Niro's son. Wow. He went on to get in some trouble. Actually spent some time in prison, but as soon as he got out of prison, right back into the acting world. He was cast in a season or two of The Sopranos. Great, really talented guy. He plays the father, my son in the film. He plays. So it's really well done. The director, easily one of the best directors I've ever worked for. It's been a great ride.
Oh, it's nice to hear that he's done so well. I can tell how immensely proud of him you are as well. That's amazing.
Really. And he's the best thing about him, he's a great kid. Mm-hmm. He's a great kid. He's very humble. He never, he wants people to like him for him, not because because that happened at school. The kids all wanted to know him, and then within a couple of months it wears off, and he almost got bullied, mostly by the girl, because he thinks he's so high, and he never was that way. He was never that way. And now that he's older, he's 16 now, and it's different. He doesn't mention acting at all. He just wants to be a high school kid growing up. But when the acting job comes up, he goes all out to get it. He's a great student of acting. Just a nice kid, very generous, very gentle, kind. I couldn't be more proud of him, and more proud of that than his obvious talent. He's been doing stand-up comedy since he's 9 years old in comedy clubs, not like a pub. He's doing them in real comedy clubs, New York City, Long Island. Just a really talented kid.
I want to get back to you now.
Come on. Sorry.
No. I wanted to hear about your son. That it's amazing. No, it's great. We go full circle on this show when I have guests on. That's what we try to do. But yeah, your career in stand-up comedy and TV for the listeners and the viewers, your experiences that I'd like to hear. Just stuff you can remember fondly.
Well, I left the financial world, the end of '87, right before the crash. It was October and November, I think November of '87. And I went right to stand-up. I got hooked up early. I did one open mic night, and that led me right into paying gigs. I did I'm going to say about 6 months of stand-up. And a friend of mine was the merchandise manager for U2. Made a ton of money, and during that time, the U2's manager hooked up with UB40, and they were coming to do a US tour, UB40, and this guy needed a merchandise manager, somebody to go on tour with UB40. And I said, wow, great way to see the country. We were going to do like 40 states, like a 4-month tour. And it would give me a chance to sit back and start writing some new material. And I had a great time. What a great group of guys, UB40, talented, and love them. So when I got back off the road, friends of mine started this murder mystery company. They said, we're doing a show. We need a vaudeville comic. Come audition. I went and auditioned. Had no desire to be an actor. Wanted to do, but I got to do some stand-up during these shows, and they paid triple what a stand-up gig would pay. So I did it, and that's where Vince saw me. And I started to fall in love with the idea of being an actor. And I wanted to perfect my craft, get some lessons in, and booked my second audition for a commercial. Started booking some films, and really focused on theater, because that's really how you learn the craft. Live audience, instant response. And I spent a lot of time doing theater. I did mostly theater towards the end of the run, but I did these short films with this guy that these films are all award winners it's a great experience. It actually rewrote one of them into a feature that we're trying to sell now. So that's basically what it was. I did a lot of theater. I did, maybe 4 or 5 films, couple of commercials. But wrestling, when I left WWF, I only maybe had 7 more years of a career before I left the business. So it was short. My son's already been an actor longer than I have, and he's only 16. But he's got the best coach in the world. No, just kidding.
No, he has.
Yeah.
No 2 ways.
Yeah.
All there, right with him, man, in the trenches. Absolutely. Who was some of the people that influenced you in TV, film? Maybe
Oh my God.
Comedy.
Well,
I'm sure there's an array.
Yeah,
there's an array.
I still think that Curly from the Three Stooges never got credit for his brilliance. To me, the funniest man that ever lived. And like stand-up wise, big fan of Don Rickles, Richard Pryor, and right up through like Eddie Murphy. I mean, I was well in my adult years by the time he made the scene, but just ridiculously talented. And TV wise, like acting wise, comedic acting, Peter Sellers, just the best. Gene Wilder. God, what a and huge fan of Monty Python. I mean, John Cleese, that Faulty Towers, that's what I'm a big fan of physical comedy, and all 3 of those, Monty Python, Gene Wilder, Peter Sellers, so much of their comedy was physical. And I think that was an influence on me. In terms of my comedy style. I mean, look at Jameson. He was just this, I don't know, this is going way back now, but a big influence early on for me was Jerry Lewis. I don't know if you know who that is.
I do.
He was, to me, very Jameson. I never modeled Jameson off of anyone, but I could see how some of these people influenced my comedy style. And the whole Jameson thing was such an accident. I was helping write a show for this murder mystery company after we did the vaudeville show. It was a 1920s period piece. We had to write a new show because we were selling out every weekend. But we were going to lose. People are not going to come back and see the same show again. So we had to write a new show. And they asked me to help write it. I wrote it with these two women. And we came up with this character, Jameson. But I was going to play a totally different character. Something not as challenging actor-wise, because I had just been starting out. Plus, he was so nerdy, and I was so not that guy. I was, very physically fit, a little bit. All my roles, acting roles, were like, drug gangs and like Spanish drug lord or mafia type. I always played the tough guy, so I had a different role. But we decided to go union for this second show, which is very expensive, but we can attract better actors. So we had to cut the cast down. So we cut out two characters, and they cut my role. And they said, you got to play Jameson then. And I'm like, I can't play Jameson. I don't, not the way we wrote him. We got to rewrite. No, you could do it. Just come to the first rehearsal. Let's see what you could do. And I brought a pair of glasses. I crossed my eyes. And from that first rehearsal, this character came out of me that I didn't even know I had in me. And it was, and looking back, I could see what I picked up from Curly, from the Three Stooges, what I picked up from Jerry Lewis, and comic timing. Peter Sellers and Gene Wilder. I mean, you can't argue with their timing. They were laugh out loud funny, but in such understated ways that, that's pretty much my influence. Yeah.
Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor, a film that my dad used to play to me.
Oh my God.
See no evil, hear no evil. In the bar, when they're having the fight in the bar. It's just, when things stay with you. And we obviously recorded it on VHS, watched it time and time again. I was only young, years later. I was probably watching it in like the mid late 90s when he showed me. And I watched it so many times, but I always look back to that bar fight scene with them two. Incredible. Brilliant movie, Young Frankenstein. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. He's and Blazing Saddles, two Mel Brooks films where Gene Wilder, should have won Best Actor, both for both of those films. He's one of my favorite. Yeah, he was brilliant. And Richard Pryor, he wasn't even an actor. He wasn't even a trained actor. He was a stand-up, and he did a couple of movies. I mean, the movie with the toy with Jackie Gleason, he'll make you cry in that film. He's that good and believable, and he's not just a funny man, What would be your tips for people wanting to get into the entertainment industry? Young people, maybe older people. It's never too late.
Absolutely,
is it? It's never
too
late.
I would say that get some instruction for the basics. The most important thing is to get representation from an agent or a manager, because then you get auditions all the time if you have somebody. But that's the trick, is how somebody starting out could hook up with representation. There are actors that study for years that never get that break to where they can get an agent or a manager to rep them. I got lucky when I was when I was first on with WWF. I actually had agents and managers and casting directors contacting me, asking if I had representation So I never had to fight that fight. My son, the same thing. As a 3-year-old, I got him into this class for 5 to 10-year-olds, and the last class they bring in a coach, a casting director from Sesame Street. They brought in an agent and a manager, and he was 3. He was by far the youngest kid. They didn't even want to take him because of how young he was until they met him and saw that he was well beyond his years. He could be directed at age 3. And that's the whole thing. That's why they don't start him so young, because, if they want a 3-year-old, they'll get a 5-year-old that could pass for 3. But he got right in there. He got signed that night. He was the only one in the class that got signed. And he's still with the same manager today. And that's like 12 years ago, 13 years ago already. So that's the key, is to be able to get enough tape of yourself and some good photos, and just reach out to managers and agents because for me, I don't coach theater. I don't coach musical theater. The only thing I coach audition technique for on-camera jobs like commercials, films, TV. And I can generally take a kid and get them to a point fairly quickly to where we could put something together for agents and managers to look at. And I have some really good contacts in that world, especially being in New York. I even have contacts in LA, where I can get a kid seen by some reps, which is huge. I mean, it's such a shortcut. And there are so many kids. Oh, shit. Did I lose you?
Yeah, it's okay, John. I think you should be able to switch it back on, mate.
Oh, my God. I'm like, oh.
See at the bottom where it says, yeah, you are.
Yeah,
you're back. And you're going.
Wow.
You're going.
I am so media. I'm like a prehistoric man when it comes. Thank God for my son, because he set me up with Zoom, Face, all these things that I have to be involved in. I would have never joined even Facebook if Joe didn't tell me 10 years ago, you got to have some social media.
Yeah. You have to have that media influence, man.
Yeah, I couldn't even get on this morning. I had to wake him up to get me hooked up with you.
It's no problem, man. It's no problem. Yeah, you were just saying about helping people getting into the industry.
Yeah, these kids, some kids are so talented, and they just don't have either the resources or the guidance to know how to break into the business. I've coached a lot of kids into, into contracts with agents, and I have a formula, and I'm sticking with it. And some kids that I could tell right away and nowhere near ready. I'm not a real patient guy when it comes to babying kids through this. If they're not putting in the work every week, they come to class and they're not prepared. I lose my patience really quickly. I'm not doing it for the money. I charge very little for what I do. For me, it's all about giving something back and finding those kids that really deserve a shot. And I'll do what I got to do to get them. If they're committed, passionate, I'll go the extra mile for sure.
Good insight there, John. Good insight. No, that was cool. That was cool. Do you catch any modern wrestling? I've got to ask. Are you aware of what's going on the current scene?
Not. I only do because 90% of my Facebook fans are wrestling fans. Mm-hmm. So I see stuff posted from time to time. The gig my son got. I mean. And he was Little Johnny in the Wyatt Family for Extreme Rules, 2014. The steel cage match with John Cena, and everybody thought, that I got him that gig. My relationship with WWE, he booked that on his own through his agent. And the funniest thing was, I had no idea going in to it I almost didn't do it because we had to get on a plane the next morning for LA. And I know these pay-per-view shows you're there past midnight. And he was only like maybe 11 or something at the time. 7. He was 9. He was 9 at the time. And I almost didn't do it, but said, wow, how great would it be to see some guys again? And when we got there and Vince came out and got down on one knee to talk to James face to face, tell him what he'd be doing. They'd be hiding him under the ring. And are you afraid of the dark? Like, ask him. And he looks up at me and he says, you must be the father. And I said, yeah, Vince, you don't recognize me, do you? And now I had not seen him in 20 years. And he goes, yeah, you look familiar. So I made the Jameson face. I just went, and he was like, oh my God. I got such a nice reaction from him. Remembering, and seeing how are you? I got to bring you around. There's still people here that were here when you were there, like, some of the TV executives and stuff. And James, this was fresh off the Cam Newton commercial was still running. Mm-hmm. And when we went into the green room and the word started getting out, that's the Cam Newton kid, wrestlers were coming up to him and asking to take pictures with him. That's how unbelievable that night was. And I still have the mask he wore, signed by like 5 of that night's wrestlers.
That'll be worth some money. Not that you'd ever want to sell it.
No, I think he wants to sell it.
Oh, he wants to sell it.
He wants to sell it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, as much as he's a realist. I mean, my feeling is you want to hold on. Like, he did a Toys R Us commercial when he was 3. And what not a commercial, but it was a photo shoot where he's actually on the packaging of the toy. It's an army uniform, with the walkie-talkie, the grenades, the canteen, all the knickknacks, the vest, the helmet, the army helmet, and it comes on a hanger. And his picture is on the packaging, James' picture, talking in the walkie-talkie. And I bought one and I saved it. That I would never sell because that's something that it was like his first job. But I think that there's so much pleasure that somebody would get out of this, showing it off. And it's Bray Wyatt. It's Ryback. I don't know who a lot of these. Kingston.
Kofi.
Kofi Kingston.
Yeah.
And there's Cody
Rhodes, who's obviously now with
Cody Rhodes
running AEW with the Khans. Yeah.
So anyway, he's selling that. Joe's actually listing it. I don't even know what he's asking, but and we did a signing. It was the last time I saw Bobby Heenan before he passed. Mm-hmm. I don't do many of these signings. I've done less than, I'd say maybe 7 signings in the last 10 years, mostly because I was always so busy with my son's career. But happened to do this one event where Bobby was going to be there. And I was on the cover of the WWF magazine, I said, with Ted DiBiase and King Kong Bundy. And I had them sign King Kong Bundy and Ted, that cover that I'm on with them. And then I bought my son a belt so he could run around and get signatures. And, it's a shit belt. It's a foam belt, but it's got a nice message from Bobby. It's got Ted. It's got King Kong Bundy and Danny Davis, who I don't know why that's on there, but no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, and we're selling that too. So that's it. Yeah, listen, these are his, whatever he wants to do. Joe said he'd help him sell them. He's saving for a car. And this kid's literally, when he turns 21, could buy a house, never mind a car, because of his trust. That's what they do with. And but for now, he's still a 16-year-old kid. He can't touch that money.
Absolutely.
And he wants some nice things.
It's
and
cool.
I can't.
It's cool that he's got all that in place ready for when he does, come of age to do that. That's the adult thing, having that in place. That's incredible.
Right.
That's
and
incredible.
he's got some great stuff that he would not part with. But he totally gets, for a 16-year-old, how much more enjoyment other people might get out of these things. He's got a hat, a baseball cap, signed by Cam Newton. That's, huge, that Cam gave him at the shoot. It's not that sentiment. First of all, he was an asshole. Not a lot of fond memories from the actual shoot. So he doesn't have that emotional connection to it like he does some other things that he's got. I mean, he's got made some really great friends along the way. Did a film a few years ago. That's, I think it's on Amazon, called Rockaway. Brilliant. Another brilliant film. And he's one of the main characters. About 6 boys one summer, 1994. Is the period. It was shot in like 2014 or 2014, or 2015. But it's great that he's got this stuff to sell, but he's also got a shitload of stuff that he's attached to and never let go. It's not like he's liquidating, he just thinks that some of the stuff would mean more to somebody else than to him.
Absolutely. I tell you what, memorabilia and signing stuff through Facebook, promoters and stuff, I haven't been able to go and do conventions. There's a lot of money. There's been a lot of money in that through COVID and lockdown. So many different people doing it.
It blows me away that, like, I still have a few of my original publicity photos that were shot by WWF. Time they have the copyright on them, and they're the originals. They have that shiny coating that they make out of shellfish back in the day that preserves the picture. I probably have 6 or 7 of them left, and they're going for big money. It's shocking to me that they're selling. And Joe, and I got another promoter friend in the business that does a lot for me, Scott Wilder. They're saying, hold on to as many of these you can. They're going to go for big money.
Yeah.
So, I'm in the process too of, going on to sites where some of this stuff will sell. Got a ton of pictures, all different. My son's career and my career. The picture of, I have a picture of Bray Wyatt and James and my son, where he's holding his face. It's just a beautiful picture, and a picture of him with John Cena, where John Cena is getting spooked by this kid singing Bray's theme song with this crazy voice. So yeah, it's a great business. I'm still overwhelmed by just the loyalty and the love of wrestling fans. It's an amazing group of people, really.
It's amazing. I've been over to the States for various WrestleManias, John. I have gone over. I'd say there's no show on earth like WrestleMania, and it's just incredible. I still love it as much as I do today, as I did as a young, impressionable kid. I think a lot of people shit on the current product, but times change. It's like anything. I think people are very quick to shit on it, but they still watch the product week in, week out.
Right.
It really annoys me. I'm constructive. If I don't like something, but I always look for a positive as well, like to balance it. People are too quick. This is crap. This is it. But they couldn't write wrestling and they couldn't perform as the wrestlers do. It's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy to me. Just don't watch it if it's putting you under so much stress.
It's way more athletic now. There were some guys back in the day that when I first watched wrestling, it's got to be late 60s, but was always so impressed with Mil Mascaras, who is he was like a real wrestler, like an Olympic wrestler type, where he had all the moves to shoot and very acrobatic. Mr. Perfect, one of my favorite. I mean, he was, some of them were really good. Bret was good. I mean, these guys.
Still my favorite. And I tell you what, John, I met him at WrestleCon in 2013, and I was at SummerSlam 92 in Wembley when he took on the Bulldog. I couldn't muster up a sentence when I met him. I never struggle at these meet and greets and the conventions.
Right.
John, I barely could, because he was my favorite. I was just in awe. Sorry, I've cut in there. I've jumped in.
Yeah, no. In fact, one of my favorite episodes of Primetime was, I stumble into his locker room, and he, I think, yells at me or something, or what are you doing here, or something like that. And I'm, of course, reacting like, scared out of my mind. And he winds up giving me his sunglasses, and that's how the show starts. That they call that a cold opening, for that. And really, really physically talented. And now mostly everybody is on that certain athletic level where they can, really make stuff look crazy, that they're doing. And, I mean, even Owen Hart, it was so physically blessed. But yeah, it's a different product. I mean, I was never really a wrestling fan. I as a young kid, I'd say maybe 8, I started watching, and, as soon as I realized that who was going to win before the match even started, it was not fun for me. I was very, very competitive. I was a huge football fan. Since I was like 6 years old, baseball, all these sports, played a lot of sports. So I actually wrestled, but not that kind of wrestling. And it was like, if you were living on this planet during the 80s, you could not escape wrestling, because when Vince McMahon took over, and it was all over MTV, you couldn't escape. You knew who Hulk Hogan was, Andre the Giant. You knew these guys. Not that I sat and watched episodes. The only time I ever watched was when I was on. So now I'm not. I do watch some stuff. I see that. One of the things that I loved about that time versus now, I think the gimmicks were better. Like, you had the British Bulldog. You had these guys that were defined their character, and they were. And it was so funny to see how they went from heel to good guy. Like the guy you thought was the worst guy on earth could suddenly come out, like Jake the Snake, went back and forth. But mostly a bad guy. But I could remember times, Sergeant Slaughter, same thing. And they had one of everything: an army man, a policeman, a Canadian policeman, the British, they had one of everything. The Sheik. And it was very well defined. Okay. That's my story.
John, I would be remiss not to speak about an event that you've got coming up a week from Saturday the 7th of August, an intimate night with Jameson and friends. So yeah, just what will be happening on that evening in New City, New York?
Well, we're going to be doing a show, a comedy / storytelling hour, with me, James, Greg Valentine, and Mario Mancini, who is one of the best jobbers that ever lived. Mm-hmm. And it's going to go into, from there, it's going to go into a Q&A. And as a bonus, I'm going to show the 13-minute tape that I was doing. Is going to, be like the world premiere of I'm calling it Jameson, the Lost Episode. It's really fun. And then we're going to do a meet and greet after that, where, so it's going to run 4 to 5 hours. And it includes a a 3-course gourmet dinner.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So, and it's on the website. It's on Facebook. It's on Instagram. And I think we're launching YouTube. I think we launched it, but only put up one of the videos so far. So it'll be on there too. I think for anybody who wants tickets, I think that probably the easiest thing to do if you can't find any of those links is email me. My email is Jameson, Jameson. It's an E, not an I. It's been misspelled. It's Jameson, X is an X-ray, WWF @gmail.com.
Brilliant.
And there's a way to get tickets. I could just email me and I'll hook you up.
That's cool, man. That's cool. I had to make sure I got you to plug that because it's coming up on there.
Thank you
on
for
the
that.
7th. No problem.
And anybody that's a fan or whether you're a fan dating back to my actual days in the WWF or just a new fan or absolutely reach out and friend me on Facebook. It's my name on Facebook is John Jameson DiGiacomo.
Mm-hmm.
So, certainly, join my Instagram, look for my YouTube channel. Going to do some fun stuff with James. And again, James does stand up. So he's a perfect person to have on this show because I don't have to pay him.
It's always nice, I'm sure. It's always nice.
Cheeseburger and fries. He's good.
He'd be fine with that. I can well imagine.
He's really funny too. I mean, he does it. He's got a great.
I wish I was over there so I could go. I'd have to get over from Wales in the UK here to come.
Yeah.
I'd love to be there. I'd love to be there next Saturday.
I almost did a commercial. In London back in March. I was up there down to like 2 or 3 guys that were up for this role, and I'm such a huge fan of British comedy, right? When I watch videos, I'm either watching Gordon Ramsay or 8 out of 10 Cats.
Yeah,
are you familiar with them? All those comics.
Absolutely.
I love Sean Locke, John Richardson. These guys. There's nothing like it in the US. I watch that stuff. And of course, go back to the old Monty Python and Fawlty Towers. But, I should have been born British. I should have been born over there. I should move there.
Rod Gilbert's another good one. He's
very good.
He's Welsh, obviously, you're aware.
Yeah.
Dry, very witty.
And Jimmy Carr.
Ruthless. What you see on TV and what you see on stage, he's ruthless. He's ruthless.
I watch all his stand-up videos I love Sean Locke, and that whole show is so well done. Especially when they do 8 out of 10 Cats does countdown. But even though 8 out of 10 Cats is funny. And everybody, they have great guests, and it's really cool. It keeps me laughing.
That's cool, man. And
I absolutely love the Brits' take during the Trump presidency. Just how vocal they were. Anyway, don't want to get into politics.
No, we don't know. No, we're politics. We're a politics-free zone. I'd had enough of this when we had the election on because I've got a lot of American friends on the socials.
Yeah.
It was I'd had enough, and UK politics as well. It's just people think they know. They don't know the inner workings. They don't. They only know what they see.
Right.
Well, there we go.
Vote. Vote and shut up.
Encapsulated perfectly there. John DiGiacomo, all the way from New York in the US of A. You will remember him fondly as star of WWF, Jameson, and Jameson on the comedy circuit TV. Thank you so much for coming on Stu's Wrestling Podcast today. It's been a pleasure, sir, an absolute honor.
For me too. You're a great interview, and Yeah, had a blast.
A big thank you to Powered 4 TV for putting the episodes up on the on-demand service there. Big thank you to John Scott and Rich Crowhurst for all the support. Really appreciate it week in, week out. Nothing's ever a problem. Also, we're doing Powered 4 TV Big Fight Weekly, the MMA and boxing show with my cousin Rich and John. Have put on these first. It's been fantastic with that. Thank you to Chris Dutton again, as always, for the superb editing. I couldn't do this without him. And fantastic job once again. Thank you to Mike Angus for the intro, as always, to the show. You can find the Stu's Wrestling Podcast merch at WrestleMerchCentral.com. There is loads of stuff, lots of different items that you can get. Mugs, hats, face coverings, t-shirts, hoodies, even the new varsity jacket with embroidered Stu's Wrestling Podcast logo on it. Big thank you once again to Dean and the team for listing my products on there. Great work, great work. And we will see you soon for the next episode of Stu's Wrestling Podcast.